As well. Again, thank you everybody for joining us today. Excited to have you all here for this event. Let's see here. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events for the Startup Junkie Foundation. For those of you who may not be familiar with Startup Junkie, we are a mission-driven organization based here in Northwest Arkansas that exists to empower innovators and entrepreneurs. We do that mainly in two ways, through no-cost one-on-one consulting and through events like this one here today. We are honored to be joined today by Secretary Mike Preston. Secretary Preston is the Secretary of Commerce and the AEDC Executive Director. Secretary Preston was named Executive Director of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission by Governor Asa Hutchinson in March 2015 and Secretary of Commerce in July 2019. He's highly regarded as a leading advocate in economic development, and in recent years has made successful business recruitment trips to Japan, China, France, Germany, Israel, Cuba, Mexico, Italy, the UK, New York, Silicon Valley, and I'm sure more places than that. Through his work with AEDC, he has worked with companies to relocate to Arkansas or expand their businesses in Arkansas. Those companies have invested more than $9 billion and created nearly 20,000 new jobs in Arkansas. And I'm sure that number has grown since that was added to his bio. Before joining AEDC, Secretary Preston spent 6.5 years as Vice President of Government Relations for Enterprise Florida, the state's primary economic development organization. We are honored to have Secretary Preston here in our state, and I'm glad to have him with us here today. Secretary Preston, I know you are a busy man. You've been all over the state this week, I've seen, and I appreciate you for taking the time to be with us today.
Well, Caleb, thank you for the invitation and for having me today. It's always good to get the opportunity to speak with folks, and unfortunately we're not able to do it in person, but I think we've gotten used to these meetings via Zoom and virtually done. So if it's all right with you, I was just going to go in and kind of give you a snapshot of what's going on and the latest in the economy and the things that we've been working on, not only through economic development, but through the Department of Commerce as well. And I know there's a lot of questions that you had submitted and want to open it up. So I want to save plenty of time for that. So I'll try not to go on too long in my remarks, but just wanted to first kind of just highlight what's been going on in Arkansas. And as you mentioned in the intro, we've certainly seen the last almost 6 years now a good ride in Arkansas in terms of our job creation and our national exposure and really even international exposure. At one point about a year ago, we were one of the top 5 states leading in terms of percentage of jobs related to new jobs attributed to foreign direct investment. So we were seeing investment come in from all over the world. Arkansas was really growing its global footprint. Very proud of the team and the work that we've done to elevate Arkansas and to really get in the mix and be much more proactive in economic development. So if you look where we were, so since this administration started and we started kind of tracking the job numbers from January of 2015 when this governor took office to fast forward to February of 2020, we'd seen the state actually grow in employment terms by a total of a little over 107,000 jobs. Our unemployment was down to between 3.4 to 3.5%, depending on the month there going into February into March, which was a record low for our state. So not only do we have a record low unemployment, we actually had more folks in our labor pool than we've ever seen. We have more Arkansans working at any other point in our history. As you alluded to, we were very successful in some competitive economic development projects that we won over other states. And then you hit, mid-March of 2020, and we had our first positive case of COVID-19 in the state. And then that subsequent week, it was literally like seeing our economy drive off the cliff in the middle of the night. And bottom out and see unemployment spike to over 10%. It's just for someone in my role, in my position, and working so hard to bring jobs and lower that unemployment number. I mean, it was just gut wrenching. I mean, among everything else that was going on, the fears of the pandemic and the health pandemic, but we saw twofold that it was going to be an economic crisis as well. you look at where we were in terms of unemployment assistance, so our Department of Workforce Services. So actually, let me back up before I jump fully into the pandemic. In 2019, as you mentioned, we went through a government reorganization. So in addition to economic development, we created and stood up what's now the Department of Commerce. So in the governor's transformation efforts of consolidating and streamlining state government, we went from 42 state agencies with a direct report to the governor down to 15 that represented his cabinet now. So economic development became part of the newly created Department of Commerce, which also includes ADFA, which is our Development Finance Authority, our Workforce Services, which is over our unemployment insurance, our TANF funds, our WIOA dollars, our Office of Skills Development, our Department of Aeronautics, our Waterways Commission, and then we also have a regulatory component in our insurance, our banking, and our securities departments. So all of these got folded under the umbrella of the Department of Commerce. And in addition to my role as Economic Development Director for the state, took on the added role as Secretary of Commerce and bringing all these departments and organizations together and standing them up as one organization. That was July of 2019. So we were, less than a year into our new department when the pandemic hit. In our terms of our Department of Workforce Services, we were really seeing about 1,000, maybe 1,200, maybe 1,500 at a high per week of new unemployment claims. That was pretty typical in a good economy, and we were moving along pretty well. Then you hit that mid-March with the pandemic. In that first week when we had our first positive case, and all of a sudden we saw businesses start to close, we went from about 1,000 a week to 10,000 a week. To the following week in March, we hit 30,000. And then that last week of March, first week of April, we hit 60,000 new claims on unemployment. So from going from a system with 1,000 a week to 60,000, literally in 2 weeks' time, was just a strain on the system for all of us. And then you had the federal government come in and pass the first relief bill, which directed the states to set up new programs for unemployment. So we had, in addition to what we've always done traditionally through our unemployment insurance trust fund, we had a new pandemic unemployment assistance, which was to support independent contractors, self-employed, gig economy of workers. So this is a system that we never had, no state had in place, and we had to build from scratch. On top of that, you had the federal pandemic unemployment compensation, which was the additional $600 per week of compensation that went into everyone's unemployment checks for that time from March through August. So it was another program we had to stand up. You had an additional extended benefits program. So all told, we were very busy in trying to figure out what we needed to do to leverage and set up these programs. So that was one side of the coin, was trying to get as much assistance out to those who were impacted with a lost job and getting funds out through our Department of Workforce Services. On the other side was our economic development team. And, we're used to traveling the country and traveling the world, searching for deals, trying to bring companies in, trying to bring investment into the state, selling Arkansas and why investors should come here. And they need to look at our startup community. They need to engage in so many different ways. All of a sudden we had to put the brakes on that because we couldn't travel. We couldn't do those things that we're used to doing. We couldn't welcome, visitors and guests into our state. We were having to do things remotely. And a lot of, commerce and a lot of activity just slowed down and came to a halt. What we saw was that there was still a need out there, and we immediately pivoted, and we knew that the SBA was going to have the PPP loans standing up in a matter of, a couple of weeks, but we saw that the need was right now that some of these small businesses operate on such thin margins that, waiting 2 weeks to have funds available, they were going to have to close their doors. So we took what funds we had available at that time, thanks to the governor for putting in $6 million of his quick action closing fund, and the attorney general putting in $3 million from one of her settlement accounts. We were able to stand up a $9 million, what we call bridge loan program, that was hopefully to help small companies, small businesses bridge to the point where they were able to get the much larger PPP loans. So the only requirement, we ended up actually making this a forgivable loan. So essentially became a grant. The only thing that they had to do was to retain their employees that they had at the time and keep those employees on the payroll and their doors open. We were able to do that. We also pivoted with some of our community development block grant funds that we had previously committed to other projects that now we're not going to be able to move forward. We reallocated and authorized those funds to go to our rural hospitals that were impacted because they could no longer do elective surgeries. So in some of these rural communities, the hospital is the major employer there. And if they have to lay off folks because they don't have the funds available or coming in through those surgeries, then they, we'd hate to think that they'd have to shut their doors or that those people will be out of work. So again, we set up a program to give a grant to those rural hospitals to allow them to keep their employees employed through that time. And then as we, started looking forward to, getting back to, I don't want to say normal because I don't know how, we'll ever get back to as normal. We still a long ways to go. But when we were really reopening and letting some of the barber shops and the restaurants who had temporarily closed through the health department and CDC guidelines, we saw that there was just this sense of anxiety out there and unsureness that the people were afraid to go back to work and they didn't have the confidence to go out and spend again. So we wanted to do anything that we could to instill confidence. And at that time, it was really about providing funds to protect employees, to protect customers. So we set up the what we called the Arkansas Ready for Business Grant Program, which used some of the CARES funding dollars to make grants available to businesses to allow them to buy PPE, to do deep cleaning, to do a one-time restocking of their goods. So if you think of a restaurant who had to close down and they had a freezer full of food or a refrigerator full of food that normally they would have sold, that all went bad. They had these costs that they had to restock, and not a lot of capital coming in. So we set that program up and ended up getting an authorization of $147 million that we then deployed to some 12,000 businesses across the state. And we tracked the number of employees on there that ended up benefiting close to 225,000 employees in the state of Arkansas who were able to benefit from that program. So I'm very proud of the work that the team did here at Economic Development and throughout Commerce to offer support. We've taken it steps further then, just assessing the needs. There was a kind of a missed area on PPP. There was a gray area where the developmental disability providers, like an Easter Seals, didn't qualify. So they had a significant need. Not only do they employ nearly 1,000 people, but they assist some 4,000 to 5,000 Arkansans in their services, and they were ones that didn't have funds coming in, so they couldn't do their normal fundraisers and other things. So we set up another program to mirror the PPP that we used through CARES funds. We also had a rental assistance program that we've set up and put about $10 million into. It's offering rental assistance to those impacted. The payments actually go directly to the landlords to help these renters who are behind on their rent because they've lost a job due to the pandemic. So we're running through those funds as well. So we continue to look for ways that we as Department of Commerce can be helpful to businesses through the pandemic. And I'm certainly, again, proud of the work that we've done. But like I've shared with my team, and we've really now been able to focus on the last, 4 months or so, the pandemic is here. Hopefully not much longer. We get the vaccine distributed and people take it and we build up and we can, maybe this summer get back to more normal. But we have to live and learn and adapt in this new environment. And we can't sit around and just wait. We've got a golden opportunity in front of us with people looking to leave big cities, to leave other areas and move to a state like Arkansas. We were actually one of the top 10 states in 2020 for people to move to. That's one of the first times that we've cracked into the top 10 of that ranking. So we have this desire for people to be in our state. People are looking to get out of the more populated areas and into a more, rural area, somewhere that they can have a quality of life. We've learned through this that you can, remote work really from anywhere and have Zoom conferences, and you don't necessarily have to be in Silicon Valley or, New York City or Chicago. But you know what? You can have a really great quality of life and, work from your dock at Greer's Ferry or, Lake Hamilton or, in Northwest Arkansas and pay a lot less to live than you would if you were on the East or West Coast or one of the major cities in between. So Arkansas has a ton of appeal right now. And we really wanted to get back to proactive economic development recruitment. So we've set in and we've adjusted some, doing virtual site visits and getting more interactive with using drones to better show a site or a building. But we're also just being cautious and wearing our masks and social distancing and getting consultants and companies back into the state. So as Caleb alluded to, we've had a busy week to start off the week. We started in Fort Smith, Arkansas, with a company called Hytrol Conveyors. Kind of a unique story, if you'll indulge me for a minute. They're a company that was recruited to our state in the 1960s by then Governor Rockefeller, who was actually then in my position as the head of economic development. It was AEDC at the time. He was the first chairman of that organization. So when he was there, recruited them from Wisconsin, about 26 jobs at the time. They've now grown to over 1,200 employees in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and they make conveyors for companies who ship products. So because of the explosion of e-commerce, over the last couple of years, they've continued to grow. But what's happened during the pandemic, they've one that have seen their sales go through the roof, and there's been a greater demand. They also were impacted in March when a tornado went through Jonesboro and came about a half a mile from their facility. And they learned that, if that would have hit us, it would have really put us behind. We would have had to rebuild our facility. So they wanted to continue to grow, but they needed to do so in another location. So they actually looked at 13 other states before coming back to Arkansas and saying, you know what, Arkansas is our home. We're going to go to the other side of the state and make that our second location. So we worked really closely with them and their site selection consultants, and very proud to announce on Monday that they're going to create 250 jobs and invest about $40 million there in the old Whirlpool facility in Fort Smith, Arkansas. And kind of a neat, unique history going into that. The founder of the company, who Governor Rockefeller worked with, his grandson is going to run the Fort Smith facility. So they've certainly kept that family business going and growing. On Tuesday, we were over in West Memphis to celebrate the grand opening of Carvana's collection and distribution facility. Again, another multi-million-dollar facility that it was put up in less than a year's time, about 400 jobs associated with that. Carvana is another company that through the pandemic of online purchasing, more people are looking to online to buy and sell vehicles. So what this will be a location where Carvana, if you sell your car and Carvana picks it up, they take it to this facility, they'll service it and do all the paint, whatever needs to be done to it, and then turn around and ship it off to one of their vending machines or direct sales to folks around the country. So this was one that they needed this in this part of the region. We competed with Missouri, Tennessee, and Mississippi, and they ultimately ended up in West Memphis. So a great project and 400 jobs for for West Memphis. And then on Wednesday, we kicked off the ICBA, the International Community Bankers Association Think Tech Accelerator Program in partnership with a venture center in Little Rock. This is the third year of that. So first year, obviously, having to do it remotely in a virtual accelerator, but nevertheless, a good opportunity to really showcase the financial background that Arkansas has in financial services and fintech and our banking background. And we have companies, again, from all over the country and a couple of international ones who are participating in this and going to spend the next 8 to 10 weeks really kind of as Little Rock is their home away from home, albeit virtually. So it's a nice way to start off the year. I want to continue on this push of really being more proactive, using this as an opportunity to get more investment into our state. We certainly have that opportunity right in front of us now and want to take advantage of it. We do have some good things, going in the state right now, despite, the pandemic and the rise in numbers and rise in cases. We are seeing the vaccine being distributed. The health department and working with the governor's office are working each day to update the distribution plan and pushing that out as quickly as we can. I think you can look at our revenue collections as another thing to show where Arkansas has done a decent job in managing the balance between the health pandemic and the economic crisis, because we've actually seen our revenue collections beat our projections for the first 7 months of the fiscal year, which is just remarkable. Obviously, we're off from where we were this time last year, but with the revised projections that we're able to beat, we're in a really good position. And that's because we actually never did a shelter in place or a shutdown order. We were very measured in our approach and very data driven on what was going to allow to keep businesses open. We've had some economists look at that, and had the governor issue the shelter in place order, it potentially would have cost over 100,000 additional jobs of people who would have then had to go on to the unemployment rolls. So managing that very delicate balance right now, Arkansas has fared a lot better than other states. We got a long way to go. I don't want to, let down our guard or give anyone a false sense of hope that, we're beyond it, because we're certainly not. We still got some work to do, but very pleased of the work that's been done so far. And then you think about too about the funds that have come into the state. That's part of another reason why we've been able to leverage those into additional resources and support our departments and various programs through the CARES Act, but then also through our unemployment insurance. Something a very telling number to me is when I look at the unemployment insurance, what we paid out. If you compare, don't have the final numbers for December yet, but if you just look at the first 11 months of the year of 2019 versus the first 11 months of the year of 2020, in 2019, we paid out a total of $54 million in unemployment insurance benefits. In 2020, the first 11 months of the year, we paid out $2.8 billion. So we went from 54 million to 2.8 billion in those payments. And that's because of those additional federal dollars to the pandemic unemployment compensation and the unemployment assistance, in addition to our traditional UI payments. But to go from that, that's a significant increase. Now, I'd much rather all those folks getting payments through our unemployment insurance would be back onto a payroll and into a working environment rather than on the unemployment insurance. And that's the ultimate goal. And what we're trying to focus our efforts now is how do we get these people back into a re-employment position, something hopefully we can get done here in the near future. And as we enter the new year, we certainly get ready for a new legislative session too. So next week starts our legislative session for Arkansas. The focus will be the pandemic, our relief, our recovery, how can the legislature help us in support and what we're trying to do there. I know the governor is going to continue to make pushes for additional tax cuts. I think that's something that's needed in terms of our ability to recruit people into our state. We've made significant progress over the last 4 to 6 years on those tax cuts, and to give it a better favorable environment both for businesses and for individuals. So there's certainly a lot of work that we can do, certainly highlighting the work of the startup communities, how the state can be a better partner there and offer some additional resources and have a more favorable climate. All these things play into what we want to try and get done this legislative session. So I could probably go on for quite a while in the legislative session. I won't bore you too much because it changes every day, and it will once we get into next week and the opening of the session. But I just encourage people to who are watching and listening to pay close attention to what goes on in Little Rock over the course of the next couple of months. If you have relationships with your legislators, reach out to them. Make sure they know your feelings, how you see Arkansas, and how you want to make sure that we are rebounding from this in the right way. That it's important for those legislators to support economic development and continued economic growth and recovery. You'd be surprised when you get into session how things change. When campaigns are going on in November, everyone's all about job growth and more investment in the state, and they want to grow the economy. When you get into a legislative session in January and February, those campaign flyers don't always hold true of what they said. So it's helpful to hear from your constituents and those in the industry. So I just encourage you to reach out, and you have those matters that are important to you and your businesses and the industries that you represent. Make sure you have your voice heard, because they're going to respond to their constituents. So Caleb, I know I probably rambled on a little bit too long. I know you get a lot of questions, so let me stop there and just first of all, just thank you all for the opportunity. Thank you all for what you do in our state. It's so important to have this network and bringing folks together. And I only see growth and an upward movement for our entrepreneurship networks and our communities in Arkansas and our startup communities. We have a lot that we can seize in the next couple of months and next couple of years. And I think all of us, continuing to have dialogues like this and through Startup Junkie is going to be very important. So I wish everyone the best of luck, but let's dive into some questions and see what's on people's minds.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the recap or postmortem of the year that was. And it looks like 2021 has some good things already starting, but, with these, ribbon cuttings and announcements and things of that nature. But some, I guess, health experts think that we haven't necessarily seen the worst of the pandemic in Arkansas yet, as, with these record-breaking caseloads each day. How are y'all preparing, I guess, for the potential economic fallout of that as the health crisis, I guess, gets worse?
Like I said, I think we've done a good job so far balancing the health pandemic along with the economic crisis. Obviously, I think the numbers are going to continue to go up. We're starting to see now the spike that we've had from the Christmas holiday and folks getting together for that. And I think people still got together for New Year's, even though they were encouraged not to or stay in small groups. You're going to see those numbers. The governor's said it a few times, and so is Dr. Romero. January is probably going to be a very difficult month. February could be just as difficult as well. What we need to do in terms of economic development and our economic side of it is make sure that we still have the programs in place to support the businesses who are struggling through this time. If we can get them through these next couple of months, there's going to be so much pent up demand once people are able to get back out and start shopping and moving around more freely. I think that the support will be there, but we need to make sure that we focus on these next couple of months and having, it was good that the Congress passed the next relief round. That's going to allow us to be able to continue some of those unemployment benefits, extend some of our funds that we're using through the CARES. One of the things I didn't get into was the broadband initiative that went through the Department of Commerce. We deployed about $86 million worth of broadband deployment throughout Arkansas. We've been able to effectively get broadband now to 100,000 people in the state who before didn't have it. We have a lot more that we can do, but because we got the extension from the federal government, we're now going to be able to use more funds and take that into this year. Otherwise, it would have expired at the end of 2020. So we still have a lot of work to do, but it was amazing how many people in Arkansas still do not have adequate access to broadband. So making sure that those systems are in place for these next couple of months are going to be important. But if people just follow the health department's guidelines, wear a mask, socially distance, wash your hands, be mindful. We can still have business, we can still operate and grow our economy, albeit during a pandemic.
And do you anticipate any additional funding coming from the state for impacted small businesses?
We just wrapped up in partnership with the Parks, Heritage, and Tourism, the business interruption grant that was really focused on the hospitality sector. There might be some additional funds that kind of trickle through that. Right now, we kind of are waiting to see what Congress does with the new administration coming in and the new Congress coming in, if there's going to be some additional relief. There was some, another round of PPP that was in this last bill. So there are some additional things that are coming out. There's more rental assistance, and it doesn't necessarily impact businesses. It does, if you're on the real estate side and you're making money through real estate investment, and now your tenants aren't able to pay. So there's funds available there. So I'm sure there's going to be some additional funds coming through. Just don't know exactly what it looks like and at what time that'll be available.
And as you know, we had some questions. We put out kind of a call to our followers and our audience for questions to be submitted. So I'll get to some of those submitted questions. The first one is from Devin Howland, Director of Economic Vitality from the City of Fayetteville. He asked, He says, Arkansas has some of the most antiquated liquor laws in the country. For example, a server cannot serve a glass of wine on a sidewalk cafe unless there's a perimeter fence, and bars are discriminated against when compared to restaurants who serve the same products. How might we work our way around those antiquated rules to aid our struggling bars and restaurants?
That's a great question from Devin, and certainly something that comes up. We still have dry counties in Arkansas, and sometimes when you bring in a company or consultant in from out of state or something, and you mention that it's a dry county, what you mean? It doesn't rain there? What does that mean? It's different in a lot of other parts of the country. So yeah, when you say that they're outdated, antiquated, I would tend to agree. I think what you have seen through the pandemic is because we've been able, through the governor's emergency orders, been able to relax some of those restrictions that have allowed for the outdoor dining and alcohol to be served. People realize it's maybe not the evil that they thought it was, and that this is something that should be changed permanently. So as part of, the governor has an economic recovery task force that is led by Stuart Walton, and then myself and Secretary Hurst and Secretary Ward serve as the vice chairs of that. It's one of the things that we're looking to make recommendations going into the session to some of the executive orders to make permanent. So there will be a push in the legislative session to make some of those executive orders around the outdoor dining and outdoor alcohol service and sales to make permanent. Well, there's an executive order on liability protection for businesses as well, and some workers' comp stuff. So we'll be pushing issues like that in the legislative session. So I'd say again, pay attention to the session, communicate with your legislators, let them know how impactful that has been and how meaningful it is for businesses. And were it not for some of those changes, some of these small businesses and restaurants would not have been able to survive. So it's time to let's just go ahead and make that permanent. I agree completely with that take.
Yeah, you said this might be a good opportunity to call your state lawmaker.
Yes, yes.
We have a question from Jeff of Startup Junkie Consulting. He said that there are well-documented geopolitical concerns regarding China. What position will Arkansas take as it relates to doing business with Chinese companies moving forward?
Great question. China is somewhere that we'd focused heavily on as an investment opportunity for the state in the last several years. We actually had we have an office in China. We actually had two folks working for us in China. We've scaled that back significantly. We're now just down to a contracted person that we have over there. Our Tokyo and Berlin offices have maintained the same there, but it's certainly going to change. I don't want to say that we're just going to completely opt out and not do business with China anymore. I don't think we can afford to. I mean, it's still the second largest economy in the world. Walmart has such a significant presence there. Tyson has a significant presence there. There's been Chinese investment. I think that, we just have to continue to be extremely mindful of the investment that we do see coming in from China. There'll be a lot of scrutiny, and we'll need to work with our federal counterparts to make sure that those investing in our state are doing so in a law-abiding way. But we depend on trade as a state, and agriculture is still the number one industry in Arkansas. And if we can sell more rice, more soybeans, more poultry, you name it, to China, it's almost an endless market for us. We pride ourselves on being the largest rice producer in the U.S., and we account for half the U.S. crop every year in rice. China would consume our entire Arkansas rice crop in 2 weeks. So I mean, it's significant when you talk about what potential is there for trade with China. A lot will depend on how the new administration handles China and the relationship. I think we're positioned well as a state in the relationships that the governor and myself have made in China. But a lot of it is going to depend on how China responds as well, and how this new administration does. So I don't want to say that our relationship with China is over. I never want to close the window on a relationship, but we stand ready, but we just need to be mindful.
And as you know, AEDC is a large supporter of Startup Junkie's Fuel Accelerator program,
Mhm.
which has worked to successfully recruit innovators from across the country uh, and across the world to Arkansas to work with our local enterprises. So first of all, thank you for that continued support there. But can you tell us why programs like Fuel Accelerator programs are so important to the AEDC as another facet of economic development?
Yeah, absolutely. In traditional economic development, I'm a big proponent of that in recruiting industries and new companies. But to me, in economic development, you always have to be changing and be innovative and try to get ahead of what's next. And to me, these accelerator programs and what Startup Junkie has done and the Venture Center and so many others in these accelerator programs is just paramount. I want to phrase this right. Traditional economic developers might not necessarily think or understand that and say, yeah, that's not something that we're going to get involved in. To me, we have to have that. We have to have that along with what we're doing in recruitment. We need to, foster a startup community that is in a landscape that really helps entrepreneurs. And if we're welcoming to companies from all over the world to come in here and say, hey, you're a startup company, but you can come in here and, we'll mentor you, we'll help you find access to capital. You'll work with our great existing companies that we have. And you know what, you might not even decide to stay in Arkansas, but you're going to know about it and you're going to have connections here. Maybe when you do strike it big, you're going to see an opportunity to come here in the future. So it is so important. And, if we don't do more in entrepreneurship and startups, we're going to get further behind, and we can't let that happen.
Jeff Standridge would say that's economic development versus economic empowerment.
There you go.
There's obvious value in recruiting companies to Arkansas, like you said, with the high trawl announcement in Fort Smith this week, Carvana and West Memphis. But as we both know, small businesses are the backbone of our economy, and many of them have had to shut their doors in 2020. How do we go about seeding those new small businesses for 2021 to kind of bring that back?
I think that's something you look at too in a legislative session, that, we need to make some resources available to small businesses, because so many did have to close and are now looking for new opportunities to open back up. And if that's something, that the entrepreneurial spirit of Americans is it's untouched by anyone in the world. And I put Arkansans up there at the top of that list in America of just our ingenuity. And I think, out of the pandemic, there's going to be all kinds of opportunities for new businesses to start up and, problems to tackle. And people are going to do so by starting new businesses and coming up with new ideas. So there's not going to be any shortage of people coming to the table with good opportunities. And I think we just need to make sure as a state we're doing everything we can to have a landscape that is supportive of that. And if the legislature is so willing that we can make additional funds available to allow them, whether it be access to capital or, access to new markets, or maybe it's something that we do to make it more attractive for capital to flow into the state from, from venture capitalists or other sources, and treat that in a way that we've never done so, to allow those funds to be available. And then, like I said, you have to have them working together. If, an announcement like Hytrol or Carvana, there's going to be, spin-offs and support companies that pop up just because those companies are there now, and they create a new market in West Memphis and Fort Smith and those surrounding areas. So to me, there's plenty of opportunity out there and things that we can do to, really help propel us as we get into 2021, and hopefully can get this, pandemic in our rearview mirror.
Back to some of our submitted questions here. Have one that goes back to the topic of accelerator programs. Jeff Standridge of Conductor asks, says the governor has announced his plans to move the accelerator program funds from the governor's rainy day funds to a permanently budgeted line item. Is that still on track, and are there other initiatives on your radar to support such entrepreneurial developments?
Yeah, that's still on track, and great question there from Jeff. And I think that just goes to show the importance of the accelerator programs and how serious this administration is about supporting entrepreneurship in the state of Arkansas. The governor's always found it in his rainy day funds to be able to provide funding for this, but we want this to last beyond an administration. We want this to carry on into, multiple administrations going forward. So by making this a line item in the budget, it allows us to do that. And so far it's on track. This was in the governor's budget recommendations as was presented in the fall, and then heard by the legislative council back in, goodness, I guess that was November. So as of right now, on track. Again, we start session on Monday, and anything can happen, but so far that's the plan.
And Tiffany Henry asks, now that the Competitive Communities Initiative has had a few years to gain traction, what impact have you seen in participating cities, particularly in the more rural areas?
That's a great question, and yeah, we're very proud of our competitive communities, and while we've had several who have completed and now have the certification and the designation as a competitive community, we have several who are in the process of doing so, and by even just being in that process have already bettered themselves. So we've seen it in not only in rural communities, but in larger, more populated areas as well, that have allowed them to have secured sites and have a funding stream for economic development, and having a partnership with workforce development and workforce entities, really a workforce pipeline, if you will. So it's been very impactful. You're seeing it in rural communities that are really starting to set themselves apart. And even during the pandemic, we had an announcement of a company in Ash Flat, Emerson, which is a Fortune 500 company, is going to be doing a 200 job plus project in Ash Flat, Arkansas. 200 jobs in Ash Flat, Arkansas is, like 1,000 jobs in Little Rock. I mean, it's a major impact on that community. So I'm very pleased with the success that the program has had so far. Obviously makes it a little bit more difficult during a pandemic. So hopefully when it's, again, one of those things that we can focus some more time and effort and spending more time with our communities as they try to complete that process.
Grace Rains asks, do you see the possibility of an expansion of the Educational Improvement Tax Credit Program, particularly as other new types of startup investing gains popularity and traction? Could this program grow to include other types of investing, such as revenue-based investing?
Yeah, no, I do. I think, really right now, I think everything's kind of on the table, and something that's been successful like that. And we are seeing the new types of investment come in. I'd certainly be open and willing to have that dialogue and see it expanded. So I think it's certainly something that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Awesome. And I will actually conclude with this question, or throw one last question at you,
All right.
Secretary Preston. What words of inspiration or guidance might you have for Arkansas entrepreneurs and small business owners? The new year's underway. Everybody's kind of anxious and maybe even a little bit nervous about what the new year might hold. What type of guidance or encouragement could you give us?
Goodness, I'll just say that the spirit of entrepreneurship in Arkansas is almost unmatched anywhere. When you think about a Sam Walton or a Don Tyson or a Bill Dillard, and the vision that they had to start a small company, and you look at these Fortune 500, in some cases Fortune 1, some of the largest companies in the world who are located here, they started off with just an idea. And all these folks, when they built these businesses, or a Charles Morgan who has built multiple businesses now, we have that can-do attitude and that can-do spirit in Arkansas, and it has carried our state for now generations. To me, now is the time for that next generation to really step up. Who's going to be that next Sam Walton that creates a Walmart, or the next Charles Morgan who builds an Axiom and then creates a First Orion and does all these great things for our state? We have that ability to do that right here in Arkansas. We don't lack really anything that other states might have. If you have that idea and that willingness to do something, we can get it done in Arkansas. Maybe other states have advantages in some areas, but I put us toe to toe with anybody. And I will say, some encouraging words that, out of the pandemic, there are going to be new opportunities. It's how do we capture those opportunities? Who is going to be the one who has that, that idea or multiple ideas that turn into a business plan, that turn into a business, and eventually, turn into success for that company. We can do it. The state's here to support you through it. And I just know that, in Arkansas, we've always figured out a way to get it done, and I'm confident that we will continue to do so.
If those individuals have the next great idea, they can always reach out to Startup Junkie in Northwest
That's
Arkansas, and Conductor in Central Arkansas, and in collaboration with AEDC, I bet we can help them as best we can. Secretary Preston, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you for speaking openly and candidly about these topics. And as always, thank you for your continued support of Startup Junkie.
All right, Caleb, thank you. It's good talking with everyone today. Take care. Happy New Year.
Have a good day. Bye.